What happens when the weight of a father's past hangs over a son's future? Welcome to Movie Bites, where we bring you the stories that shaped us, moved us, and stayed with us long after the credits rolled. Today, we're stepping into He Got Game, a film that wasn't just about basketball, but about broken bonds, redemption, and the pressure that comes when everyone sees you as their way out. We'll catch up with the cast behind Jesus Shuttlesworth, Jake, Lala, and more, looking at where they are now and how this Spike Lee classic still hits hard all these years later. First up, we got Jake Shuttlesworth, played by the one and only Denzel Washington. Now, this was a man who'd been behind bars for 6 long years. His offense? Taking his wife's life. But it wasn't some cold-blooded act. It was one of those heartbreaking moments where a hot temper, a heated game of basketball, and family tension exploded all at once. He didn't mean to take her life. It was a tragic mistake. Jake was tough, no doubt about that. A man who pushed his son hard on the court because he wanted the best for him. But one night, after a rough training session and a tense dinner table scene, things spiraled out of control. He roughed up his son, and in the middle of the chaos, he shoved his wife, and she died on the spot. That one moment shattered everything. Jake was locked up, and his children had to grow up without their father. But then he gets a second chance. The governor's office offers him a deal, convince his son Jesus, now a top prospect, to sign with Big State College, and Jake could get time shaved off his sentence. So now he's a man on a mission, trying to make amends, trying to reconnect, and racing against the clock. This was a role you couldn't help but feel for. Denzel brought raw emotion, regret, and grit to Jake's character. He was trying to fix something that might be beyond repair. Denzel Washington was 44 at the time, and let's be real, everything this man touches turns to gold. He Got Game may not have been a huge box office smash, but it was still a powerful film. That said, when it comes to Denzel's catalog, this one gets overshadowed by some of his other classics. Before this, he'd already blown us away in Malcolm X and Philadelphia. And since then, man, the hits just kept coming. Training Day, Man on Fire, Fences, The Equalizer series, the list goes on. He even stepped behind the camera with powerful work like Antwone Fisher and A Journal for Jordan. Today, Denzel is 70 years old and still going strong in the game. He's more than just a legendary actor, he's a living icon in cinema. Up next is Jesus Shuttlesworth, played by none other than Ray Allen. Now, where do we even start with Jesus? He was Jake's son. And if you ever wondered why he was named Jesus, it's because Jake was a huge fan of NBA legend Earl the Pearl Monroe. Monroe's game was so smooth that people nicknamed him Jesus, and Jake, being the hoops-obsessed dad that he was, went with it. But let's be real, Jesus carried a lot of pain. He resented his father deeply, especially after that tragic night when his mother lost her life. So when Jake shows up out of nowhere after 6 years in prison, Jesus doesn't want to hear it. Doesn't want an apology, doesn't want closure. He just wants Jake to leave him and his little sister alone. Jesus had to grow up fast. Raised by his uncle, he basically became the man of the house and took care of his sister. But despite all the struggles, all the anger and trauma, Jesus still rose to the top. He became that dude on the court. And now, fresh out of high school, every major college and every big-name agent is on him, trying to lock in the next big thing. What made Jesus stand out wasn't just his game, it was his values. Despite everything, despite the bad blood, he ends up making the honorable choice. He goes with the college his dad wanted, and that moment spoke volumes. Now, I gotta keep it real. I didn't fully agree with Ray Allen being cast in this role. Acting wasn't his lane. He's not an actor. He's an NBA legend. And yeah, some of the emotional scenes didn't hit the way they could have. But here's the thing. Spike Lee wanted a real baller in the role, and Ray's presence, his authenticity on the court, gave the character a kind of realism no actor could fake. So yeah, he gets a pass for that. Ray Allen was just 23 years old at the time, and He Got Game marked his film debut, right in the middle of his rising NBA career. And even though he never became a Hollywood regular, fans and teammates still call him Jesus Shuttlesworth to this day. That name stuck. He made one more movie appearance as Marcus Blake in Harvard Man, 2001, but after that, it was all basketball. Today, Ray Allen is 49 years old and retired. At the time of his retirement, he held the record for the most three-pointers in NBA history, until Stephen Curry passed him in 2021. As of 2025, he sits third on the NBA's all-time three-point list. On the court, Ray Allen will always be a legend, and thanks to this film, Jesus Shuttlesworth became more than just a character. It became a part of who he is. Moving on, we have Mary Shuttlesworth, played by the talented Zelda Harris. Does she look familiar to you? If she does, then chances are you've watched Crooklyn. That's right. Zelda first caught our attention as young Troy in Spike Lee's semi-autobiographical gem back in 1994. And here she is again in He Got Game, bringing quiet strength to the screen. Mary was Jesus' younger sister, just a young girl trying to make the best of life in Coney Island. Her world had been shaken. Her mother passed away, her father was locked up, and now she was being raised by her big brother in the projects. But despite it all, Mary was focused. She was good in school, sharp, observant, and hopeful. Her brother Jesus was on the verge of making it big, and in her eyes, they were both about to leave the struggle behind. One of the most touching things about Mary was her heart. When her father, Jake, came back into their lives, she wasn't angry like Jesus. She didn't hold that same grudge. Deep down, she understood. She knew he never meant to hurt their mother. She still saw him as her dad, and that love was still there. And Jake, you could tell he adored his little girl. Zelda Harris was only 13 years old at the time of filming, and this was actually her third movie. She'd already wowed audiences 4 years earlier in Crooklyn, and Spike Lee had no hesitation bringing her back for this role. She delivered once again with a quiet but powerful performance. Unfortunately, Zelda's acting career didn't really take off the way many hoped. He Got Game ended up being her last major film role. After that, she chose a different path, one focused on education and creativity outside of the spotlight. But don't get it twisted, Zelda is incredibly talented. She's a gifted musician who plays piano, saxophone, and she can sing too. Today, Zelda Harris is 40 years old. She works as a teacher, pouring into the next generation with that same heart we saw on screen. Her time in Hollywood may have been short, but for those of us who grew up watching her in Crooklyn and He Got Game, Zelda will always be a star. A family ain't complete without a mom in the picture. And in He Got Game, that mother was Martha Shuttlesworth, played by the graceful and talented Lonette McKee. Martha was Jake's wife and the loving mother to Jesus and his little sister, also named Mary. She was the heart of the household, the kind of woman who always had a warm meal on the table and a calming presence even when things got tense. But sometimes, even a peaceful home can be visited by the devil. And one tragic night, that's exactly what happened. After a rough game of basketball between Jake and Jesus, tensions boiled over at the dinner table. One thing led to another, voices were raised and tempers exploded. In a flash of anger, Jake's actions took Martha's life. He never meant it, but the damage was done, and it's what landed him behind bars. We don't get to see much of Martha in the film, but from what we do see, it's clear she was a loving, grounded woman who tried to hold her family together. Her absence is felt in every scene, and her memory becomes the emotional undercurrent that drives both Jake's guilt and Jesus' pain. Lonette McKee was 44 years old when she brought Martha to life. By that time, she had already made her mark in film, especially with her standout performance as Sister Williams in Sparkle, 1976, a role that still holds weight in Black cinema. She also collaborated with Spike Lee on Jungle Fever, which earned her an NAACP Image Award nomination, and appeared in Malcolm X. Now, 70 years old, Lonette McKee has stepped away from the spotlight, with her last on-screen role in the TV series The Game back in 2014. But whether she's on stage, in front of the camera, or just remembered for the soulful characters she gave us, she remains a respected and unforgettable presence in the industry. Let's shine a light on the late, great Bill Nunn, who played Uncle Bubba in He Got Game. Uncle Bubba was the legal guardian of Jesus and Mary after their father Jake was sent to prison. Now at first, Bubba comes off as that responsible uncle trying to hold the family down. But it doesn't take long to see that this man was the definition of a greedy uncle. Sure, he looked after the kids for a while. But when it came to Jesus making that big decision about college, Uncle Bubba wasn't focused on what was best for Jesus. He was focused on how he was going to eat. And by eat, I mean get paid. He kept reminding Jesus about everything he'd done for him, almost like he was owed a commission for raising his own nephew. The man was practically sweating every time Jesus hinted at making a choice without him. That paranoia, that sense of entitlement, it was wild. But at the same time, Uncle Bubba brought a comedic edge to the film that really worked. Bill Nunn made the character feel real. Flawed? Yes. But entertaining? Absolutely. At the time of filming, Bill Nunn was 45 years old. And let's be clear, by then, he was already a well-known face in black cinema. He had made his mark in Spike Lee joints like School Days, Do the Right Thing, and Mo Better Blues. And he'd held it down in classics like New Jack City and Sister Act. Just like Denzel, Bill Nunn was one of those actors whose career truly leveled up under Spike Lee's direction. After he got game, Nunn went on to appear in more than 30 other films. He was a talented, versatile actor who could shift between drama and comedy with ease. Sadly, Bill Nunn passed away in 2016 at the age of 62 after a battle with leukemia. He left behind a loving wife and 2 children and a legacy of unforgettable performances. He'll always be remembered for the heart and humor he brought to his roles. Rest easy, Bill Nunn. You're still missed. And then we have Aunt Sally, played by the talented Michelle Shea. Aunt Sally was Uncle Bubba's wife, but let's be real, she was the total opposite of her greedy husband. While Bubba was busy calculating how Jesus' decision could benefit him, Aunt Sally was over there being the voice of reason. She wasn't just Jesus and Mary's aunt by marriage. She was their mother's sister, and she had made a promise long ago. If anything ever happened to their mom, she'd take care of her kids. And she meant that. Aunt Sally was a woman with her own mind. You know how in some households, the wife just nods along with whatever the husband says? Yeah, not Aunt Sally. She stood her ground even if it meant clashing with Bubba. She made it clear. Jesus didn't owe them anything. Not money, not decisions, nothing. Her only concern was that he did what was best for him. Aunt Sally was a real one, a quiet force in that household, but powerful all the same. Michelle Shea was 43 at the time she played Aunt Sally. Her acting journey started way back in 1975 with the play Ceremonies in Dark Old Men, and she's been steady ever since. She popped up on shows like Miami Vice, Another World, and even The Cosby Show. She also had a small credit in Crooklyn. She played a drunk woman. But I'll be honest with you, if you blinked, you probably missed it. Because I definitely did. What really sets Michelle Shea apart is her work on the stage. She's an accomplished theater actress who has earned her stripes over the decades, and she's still pushing forward. Today, she's 70 years old, still standing tall, and still respected in the world of acting. Aunt Sally didn't have many scenes, but every moment she was on screen, she made it count. Living in Aunt Sally and Uncle Bubba's household was their son Boogie, played by none other than Hill Harper. Boogie was their video game-loving son, a simple kid who was always chilling with a controller in his hands and a big old grin on his face. But don't get it twisted. Boogie wasn't just about games. He was Jesus' cousin and childhood homie. The two grew up hooping together on the courts of Coney Island, and you could tell they had that real bond. What I loved most about Boogie was just how goofy and lovable he was. Boogie also went to the same high school as Jesus, and with everyone in the school pressuring Jesus to spill the tea on where he was going to sign, Boogie became something like a short bodyguard. Yeah, he wasn't exactly towering over people, but he had heart. Boogie was out here running interference like, back up off my cousin, let him think. Now, Hill Harper, the man behind Boogie, was actually 32 years old at the time. I know, right? Playing a teenager at 32 and somehow pulling it off. He had kicked off his film career back in 1993, and before he got game, he was already part of the Spike Lee family, appearing in Get on the Bus. After he got game, Hill Harper made a name for himself mostly on television. He landed big roles in hit shows like CSI New York, Covert Affairs, Limitless, and The Good Doctor. He's carved out a solid lane for himself on the small screen, and he's still pushing strong. As of 2025, Hill Harper is 59 years old, and whether he's playing the goofy cousin or a sharp doctor on TV, He always brings something fresh to the role. Now let's talk about Lala, played by the one and only Rosario Dawson. Lala was Jesus' girlfriend at Lincoln High. On the surface, she looked like the supportive girlfriend, but man, once the layers started peeling back, we saw the real story. Lala was not just in love, she was in business. Like everybody else in Jesus' life, she wanted a cut of whatever he was about to make. Lala wasn't just sneaky, she was playing the long game. She was using her girlfriend privileges to try and get the inside scoop on Jesus' next move. But while Jesus was out here focused on basketball and trying to keep his head straight, Lala was out here cheating. Yes, cheating, with a dude named DeAndre, who was also in cahoots with a shady agent named Dom. That agent promised DeAndre some money if Jesus signed the right deal. So you already know Lala had dollar signs in her eyes. Now, was she wrong? Kinda, but part of me gets it. She probably figured, once he hits college or the NBA, I'm getting left behind like a mixtape in the glove compartment. She was just trying to secure her bag before Jesus forgot about her, like most hoopers do their high school sweethearts. So the big question is, was Lala a bad girlfriend? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what y'all think. Rosario Dawson, who played her, was 19 years old at the time, a legit teenager, finally playing a teenager. And she killed it. She'd made her debut 3 years earlier in the cult classic Kids, which, if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's raw, real, and unforgettable. Since He Got Game, Rosario has been in over 70 films and TV shows. Yes, 70. You might remember her in Men in Black 2, Unstoppable, and plenty more. She's played dramatic roles, done comedy, voiced animated characters. She does it all. As of 2025, Rosario Dawson is 46 years old and still out here shining. Whether it's film, TV, or activism, she always brings something special. And then we have Sweetness. Yeah, that dude. You remember him, right? He was the flashy, smooth-talking pimp posted up at that sketchy apartment building where Jake was sent to stay. I don't even know what that place was supposed to be. A halfway house? A flop house? Whatever it was, it definitely wasn't safe. And Sweetness? He ran that little corner of chaos like it was his own empire. He had women working for him, including Dakota. We'll talk about her later. But Sweetness was out there doing what pimps do. Manipulating, sweet-talking, and making it look way too easy. He was the kind of guy who'd tell a woman he loved her just to get in her head, then turn right around and ask where his money was. If there were ever a Pimp of the Year award, Sweetness would have been polishing the trophy. He was greasy, he was smooth, and somehow still entertaining. He brought a twisted charm to the role that stuck with you. Now, behind that character was Thomas Jefferson Byrd, and if his performance felt a little too real, it's because Byrd had a gift for playing these gritty, complex characters. He wasn't new to this. Spike Lee had been working with him for years. He was in Clockers, Girl 6, Get on the Bus. Byrd was one of those actors who just brought it every time. You might have also seen him in Set It Off, another classic. After He Got Game, Thomas kept working. He popped up in films like Bulworth and later reunited with Spike Lee for Chirac in 2015. But he wasn't the kind of guy chasing the spotlight. He just did his thing. And when he was on screen, you felt it. Sadly, in 2020, Thomas Jefferson Byrd was tragically murdered at the age of 70. And man, that hit hard. Why someone would do that to an older man, someone who gave so much to the art? It just didn't make sense. He left behind a legacy, and a lot of fans who appreciated what he brought to the screen. Rest in peace to Thomas Jefferson Byrd. You were one of a kind, and we'll always remember you. Behind every pimp, there's always someone doing the real heavy lifting, and in He Got Game, that was Dakota, played by Milla Jovovich. Now, let's be real. Dakota was one of those characters you couldn't help but feel for. When Jake was sent to that rundown apartment complex, let's just call it what it felt like, a damn whorehouse, Dakota was already living there, doing what she had to do to get by. She worked for Sweetness, the pimp we just talked about, and it was clear her life wasn't easy. The streets had taken their toll on her, and she carried that wariness with her, even behind the makeup and the charm. But when Jake moved in next door, something shifted. There was a connection. He didn't judge her, didn't try to save her like some movie cliche. He just talked to her, In a strange way, they became each other's comfort in a very cold world. Their bond wasn't all about romance, it was more about understanding, two broken people who found a bit of peace in each other's presence. And even though the movie didn't dive deeper into their story, Dakota left an impression. Now, behind that layered performance was Milla Jovovich, who was 23 at the time. And even back then, she already had some solid films under her belt like Dazed and Confused, 1993, and the cult sci-fi hit The Fifth Element, 1997. But after He Got Game, Milla's career didn't just grow, it exploded. She became an action movie staple, especially with her lead role in the Resident Evil franchise, where she kicked zombie butt in not one, not two, but 6 films. She also brought her flair to movies like Zoolander, and continued to prove she wasn't just a pretty face, she was a legit actress with range. And let's not forget, Milla's also had a hugely successful career as a fashion model, making waves both on screen and on the runway. Today, she's 49 years old and still thriving, still modeling, still acting, still doing it her way. Dakota may have been just a small part of He Got Game, but thanks to Milla, she'll always be one of the characters we remember. Some characters don't need to yell or wave a gun to let you know they've got the power. Warden Wyatt, played by the late Ned Beatty, was one of those men. He didn't have to threaten Jake with time, he gave him time. But it came with strings, wrapped in politics and pressure. From the jump, you could tell Warden Wyatt wasn't doing Jake any favors out of kindness. This was a move straight out of the playbook. Use a desperate man to get what you want. He wanted Jake to convince his son Jesus to sign with the governor's alma mater. And if he did, Jake would get time shaved off his sentence. If not, back to the cell, no questions asked. Beatty brought a quiet intensity to the role. His warden wasn't cruel, he was transactional, cold but not heartless, polished but not to be trusted. That calm voice, those measured words, it made the deal sound clean. But you knew better. Now let's talk about Ned Beatty. By the time He Got Game dropped in '98, this man was already a Hollywood heavyweight. He broke out in the early '70s with Deliverance, then hit us with that powerhouse monologue in Network that got him an Oscar nomination. He was also the goofy Otis in Superman, a reminder that he could switch from deadly serious to lighthearted without missing a beat. Over his 5-decade career, Beatty racked up over 160 credits, films, TV shows, even voice work in Toy Story 3 as the deceptively sweet Lotso. No matter what the role was, he brought depth to it. Sadly, we lost Ned Beatty in 2021 at the age of 83. But actors like him don't fade away. They leave echoes. And Warden Wyatt? Just another quiet storm in a career full of unforgettable moments. Every story like this has someone in the background, keeping the wheels turning and the leash tight. In He Got Game, that was Detective Spivey, played by the legendary Jim Brown. Spivey wasn't rocking a prison guard uniform or barking orders behind bars. Nah, his job was more subtle but just as serious. He was one of the detectives assigned alongside his partner Crudeup to keep close tabs on Jake Shuttlesworth during his temporary release. Basically, if Jake stepped out of line even once, Spivey would be right there to send him back to prison without a second thought. Now, Spivey had that tough, no-nonsense exterior. He didn't smile much, didn't play games. But if you really paid attention, he wasn't out to ruin Jake's life. He was just doing his job. He wasn't rooting for Jake, but he wasn't out to destroy him either. He kept it professional, even when the situation got personal. And behind that quiet authority was a man who commanded respect, Jim Brown. At the time He Got Game was released in 1998, Jim Brown was 62 years old. And by that point, he was already a living legend. Before stepping into Hollywood, he was one of the most dominant athletes the NFL had ever seen. A Hall of Famer, a powerhouse. But Jim wasn't content with just being a football icon. He crossed over into film and carved out a whole second legacy for himself. He starred in hard-hitting classics like The Dirty Dozen, 3 the Hard Way, and the cult comedy I'm Gonna Get You Sucka, where he hilariously poked fun at his action hero past. Whether he was taking down bad guys or delivering that steely stare, he always brought gravity to the screen. Outside of Hollywood, Jim was about action in real life too. He was a strong advocate for Black empowerment and social change, Sadly, Jim Brown passed away in 2023 at the age of 87. But legends like him don't fade. They leave footprints, deep ones. Let's move on to another character that definitely deserves a mention, Crudeup, played by Joseph Lyle Taylor. Crudeup was one half of the detective duo working closely with Spivey. Together, they were the ones assigned to watch over Jake Shuttlesworth during his temporary release from prison. Now, Crudeup? He wasn't the type to hand out second chances. If Jake even thought about stepping out of line, Crudeup made it very clear there would be consequences. This guy was ruthless, sharp, and didn't play games. He wasn't around to babysit. He was there to make sure the state got what it wanted. And nothing more. Even though Crudeup didn't get a ton of screen time, his dynamic with Spivey added a gritty, no-nonsense energy to the story. It's one of those side characters that helps ground the film in reality, just enough to keep the tension high. Joseph Lyle Taylor was 34 years old when he stepped into Crudeup's shoes. And while he's not exactly a household name, he's been quietly doing his thing for years. You might have seen him pop up in shows like Now and Again, Law and Order, The Mentalist, Dexter, and the fan favorite Justified, where he really showed his range. Today, Joseph is 60 years old and still makes the occasional appearance on screen. He's one of those actors who might not be front and center, but when he shows up, you know the character's about to leave a mark. Moving on, we have Big Time Willie, played by the one and only Roger Guenveur Smith. Now, this wasn't your everyday neighborhood dude. Big Time Willie was exactly what his name said he was. Big time. Flashy car? Check. Gold chains? Of course. Confidence? Overflowing. He looked like someone who knew the game inside and out, and he did. From the moment he pulled up, it was clear he wasn't some random dude off the block. He was familiar with Jake, even knew his father, which hints that he had deep roots in the neighborhood. Most likely, he was an agent or someone connected to the sports business, keeping a close eye on what decision Jesus was about to make. You could feel the tension every time he showed up, like he knew something was coming and was just trying to steer Jesus the right way. But don't let the flash fool you. Big Time Willie dropped some real gems. He told Jesus straight up, "I'm the one protecting you." He warned him about how the projects will chew you up and spit you out, especially when you're someone as gifted as Jesus. And then he hit him with the real talk, the kind your uncle, your big brother, or your coach might give you, about women and drugs. He knew that as soon as Jesus stepped into that college or pro-life, the temptation would be everywhere. He was like a father figure, pulling him aside for a dose of truth before the spotlight came on. And the man behind this smooth-talking character? That's Roger Smith, who was 43 years old at the time. And he wasn't new to this. He'd already been making waves in films like School Days, Do the Right Thing, King of New York, Deep Cover, Malcolm X, Get on the Bus, and Eve's Bayou. The man's resume speaks for itself. He's one of those actors who's earned respect for always bringing depth and power to every role, no matter how big or small. The man's resume speaks for itself. He's one of those actors who's earned respect for always bringing depth and power to every role, no matter how big or small. After he got game, Roger kept the momentum going, appearing in dozens of other projects and continuing to show just how versatile he is. Whether it's drama, action, or even historical roles, this man can do it all. Today, he's 69 years old, and guess what? He's still thriving, still doing the work, still respected. Big Time Willie might have just been one scene in the movie, but thanks to Roger's performance, he became unforgettable. Up next is Chick, played by Rick Fox. And honestly, I don't know why Spike Lee chose to name this character Chick either. But hey, maybe it's because this dude had a whole lot of chicks lining up for him. Just saying. Chick was a friend of Jesus, and like him, he was from Coney Island and knew the basketball grind firsthand. Chick was a baller too, not just someone talking from the sidelines. He had game. But Chick had another mission in the movie. He was one of the people trying to recruit Jesus to Tech University. And he came in with a full-court press, literally and figuratively. When Chick invited Jesus over to Tech for that visit, it was all smiles and smooth vibes. But that campus, let's just say it wasn't all about academics. The women were everywhere, and the temptation was real. Jesus, who had been under pressure from all sides, finally let his guard down and fell into the trap. Tech University had it all: the flash, the girls, and the hype. And Chick was right there, making sure Jesus saw all of it. And now let's talk about Rick Fox, the man behind Chick. At the time, Rick was 29 years old, and just like Ray Allen, he wasn't just playing a baller on screen, he was a real-life baller, bringing a level of authenticity you just can't fake. When He Got Game came out, Rick was playing for the Los Angeles Lakers, right in the thick of his professional basketball career. He Got Game was actually his third film, and it showed he had the charisma and presence to hang with seasoned actors. After retiring from the NBA in 2004, Rick Fox made a solid pivot into film and television. He went on to appear in shows like One Tree Hill, Ugly Betty, The Game, The Big Bang Theory, and Meet the Browns. He's one of the few athletes who truly made that transition to Hollywood look smooth. Today, Rick Fox is 55 years old, still active in entertainment, and still bringing that same confident energy whether he's in front of a camera or running business ventures. Still at Tech University, we have Coach Billy Sunday, portrayed by the talented John Turturro. Now, Coach Sunday wasn't just some sideline guy yelling plays. He was a calculated recruiter who knew how to lay on the charm when it mattered. As the head coach at Tech, he was right there alongside Chick, doing everything he could to pull Jesus into their program. He didn't come at Jesus with pressure. He came with strategy. Coach Sunday even told Jesus he'd been watching him since junior high, and not just for his skills on the court. He got personal, saying how he admired Jesus for stepping up to raise his little sister after their parents were out of the picture. It was emotional, it was real, but it was also a sales pitch. Coach Sunday knew exactly what to say to get in Jesus' head and make him feel like Tech was where he belonged. Now let's talk about John Turturro, the man behind the role. At the time, he was 41 years old and already a seasoned, respected actor in the game. He had broken out with Five Corners back in 1987, and by the time He Got Game came around, he was already known for his brilliant work in Spike Lee's films like Do the Right Thing, 1989, Mo Better Blues, 1990, Jungle Fever, 1991, and Clockers, 1995. Turturro brought the perfect blend of charm, intensity, and a little bit of that used car salesman vibe to Coach Billy Sunday. It made him believable, like someone who said these speeches 100 times before to 100 other kids, but this time, he's hoping it works. Today, John Turturro is 68 years old and still very active in both film and television. Whether he's doing indie films, big studio projects, or TV dramas, he's one of those actors who just delivers every single time. Coach Sunday might not have had a lot of screen time, but in typical Turturro fashion, he made every second count. Young Jesus Shuttlesworth was played by Jade Scott Yorker, a fresh-faced kid from the projects with big dreams and a basketball always nearby. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't loud, but you could feel it. This kid had heart. Trying to grow up under the weight of his father's expectations, young Jesus just wanted to hoop. But his dad, Jake, he was relentless, pushing him, yelling, pounding into him that toughness he'd need later on. And as much as you wanted to hug the kid, you couldn't help but understand that his father was building something, trying to make him better, stronger, sharper. Jade was just 12 years old when he stepped into those sneakers, and He Got Game marked his film debut. He didn't have many lines, but man, he didn't need them. His expressions, the pain in his eyes, the quiet frustration, it all spoke loud. After this, Jade popped up in a few other projects. Most notably, he played Willie Weathers in Gridiron Gang, another young man trying to turn his life around through sports. Today, Jade Scott Yorker is 39. He's not chasing Hollywood fame anymore, but he's still in the game, working behind the scenes as a writer, producer, and director. Young cousin Booger, played by Shorty Red, was the kind of kid who always showed up hungry, and not just for food. He and Jesus, they went way back. Childhood friends growing up in the same rough streets, finding comfort in each other and a basketball. And when Booger wasn't on the court or cracking jokes, you could bet he was at Uncle Jake's house, posted up at the dinner table, ready to eat like he hadn't seen a meal in days. This kid had an appetite bigger than his stomach, and he never missed a plate or a second helping. Shorty Red was just 12 years old when he stepped into Booger's shoes. And even though his role was small, he had that spark, the kind you don't forget. After he got game, Shorty didn't disappear. He went on to appear in Precious back in 2009 and played Tiny in Before I Self-Destruct, a role he landed thanks to 50 Cent himself. He even popped up on an episode of Law & Order, proving he could handle both the streets and the screen. But these days, Shorty Red switched gears. He's in the music game now, doing his thing behind the mic instead of in front of the camera. Now 39 years old, he's carving out his own lane. And for those who remember that hungry little kid from Coney Island, he'll always be Cousin Booger, the boy who could eat you out of house and home, but had a good heart and real loyalty to match. And finally, we have DeAndre Mackey, played by Leonard Roberts. Now this dude, he was that guy. The one messing with your girl behind your back, smiling like everything's all good. DeAndre was sneaky with it. He wasn't just hooking up with Jesus' girlfriend Lala, he was also teaming up with her to steer Jesus toward signing with their agent. Not cool. Not cool at all. He didn't have much screen time, but when Jake walked up and smacked him right in the throat, man, that scene hit different. A quick moment, but everybody remembered it. Leonard Roberts was 26 years old when he stepped into the role. He had just made his film debut the year before in the romantic classic Love Jones. Yeah, that one's still a vibe. After he got game, Leonard didn't slow down. He came back strong in Drumline and really made his mark on TV, with roles in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Heroes, Major Crimes, The Magicians, and more recently, All-American Homecoming. Now 52 years old, Leonard is still doing what he loves, acting, creating, and showing up with that same quiet intensity. DeAndre might have been shady, but Leonard played him so smooth, you almost forgot how dirty he was. As we wrap up, He Got Game reminds us that some bonds are complicated, but love and forgiveness can still find a way. Thanks for watching Movie Bites. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, keep your heart open and the stories alive.